So, for more than 30 years now, this time of year has been a season of deep reflection for me. It started, I think, around the time I was 13. Maybe I was just starting high school. And I started leading into Lent because I felt like I just needed to go deeper in my faith, that I needed to not be my parents' faith, but like my faith, and that practicing the 6 weeks of Lent was part of me really entering the season of reflection and spiritual practice. And so I would, fast. Sometimes I did it in solidarity with Ramadan, and I lots of different ways that I approached it. But no matter how I leaned into the season of Lent, this weekend was the height of it all. I would start on Maundy Thursday when the sun set, and I would do a complete liquid fast from Maundy Thursday through Easter Sunday, and break it with my whole congregation on Sunday morning after we gathered for sunrise baptisms. And I remember feeling so close to God and so close to my community, and probably thankful to be wearing like a new Easter outfit sometimes, and for the Easter play and all of the things that we did. And like so many Black Christians, it would start on Friday. I do Monday, Thursday, and then on Friday we'd go to the 7 Last Words services where Black preachers would mobilize their congregation to come to a joint service. And each of them would compete with the other Black preachers. And they were supposed to preach for 7 to 10 minutes, but they would blow through that time and try to give the best sermon so that everybody would say, oh my gosh, did you hear Pastor so-and-so preach? Which made it the longest service ever. Over the years, my practice has changed somewhat. Sometimes I fast food, sometimes not. A lot more times I give up social media and other things that I find more distracting and the things that prevent me from focusing spiritually. And I still do it. But I have to admit, this year I realized that each part of this tradition, the overall Lent, even the Good Friday service, sometimes even Sunday morning, doesn't feel quite as powerful as maybe it once was. Too many of us, maybe we were just checking the box, and maybe we weren't actually experiencing the transformative possibility of this time. I've seen how over the years we've gotten pretty individualistic, and our personal faiths, our church, the institution that was supposed to help us hold that faith in community, neither personal nor communal faith is what it was in my childhood. And I have to admit that even as I'm not interested in going to church 3 times a week like I did when I was a kid, I long for the deep community that I had. And I know that what I have now is a cheap imitation of the rootedness I had then. And I'm not going to do a whole make church great again lament. But I do want to note that this season used to be a time of deep personal growth and deep communal connection that has eroded like so many other things in American civil life. And what I've gotten in its place, lots more personal mobility, the flexibility to go to church on Zoom sometimes, and a growing social media following pales in comparison to what I lost. But even in the height of those days, I have to admit that I never quite understood what was so good about Good Friday. Like, I definitely get it. Oh my gosh, Jesus made a huge sacrifice, and it was so important for us. It was life-changing. Yes. Okay, but I get that the end result was good. But if this is the day that he was killed, how is this the good day? And I get that it was good that he stood up to the religious and political leaders who were complicit and complacent in the face of a society where widows and fishermen and small business owners and folks who had to travel on crime-ridden roads were catching hell. They were struggling, and Jesus stood up for them. And he called out the corruption in the temple and in the so-called criminal justice system and in the imperial powers. Jesus exposed the deep injustice, and some people were seen, and that was good news. As Reverend Andrew Thayer reminds us in his New York Times piece on Palm Sunday, this past Palm Sunday, that Palm Sunday was a protest, not a procession. Jesus gave people hope because he was willing to speak truth to power. And that was beautiful. But they also do turn on him because they were disappointed, because he wouldn't lead them in an uprising to seize power. He didn't just say that the wrong people were in power. He said that the very system was corrupt and it needed to be overturned at its roots. And a bunch of folks who were celebrating him on Sunday, by Thursday night, were like, "What you talking about, Jesus? I thought you were so brat. But why didn't you stand up for us? Why didn't you lead the revolution?" I mean, it feels like while it all works out in the end, there really wasn't that much good about this day. And that the folks who were living in that day, Jesus, his mother, Mary, his disciples, who had spent 3 years giving up everything. Some of them left their families, left their jobs, following him around because they thought he was going to change the world. And they definitely had no idea that he was going to be betrayed by one of them, taken away without any real due process, given the death penalty, and executed all in less than 24 hours after their Seder. Like, it was sort of like Jewish Thanksgiving dinner. And then the next day they were like, what happened? And when I think about the whirlwind that they were on, I start to really get that what I'm going through right now, the pain and disappointment that I feel at what's happening to this country, maybe this is not so new. But I still have to say, what is good about seeing your world destroyed when it feels like you are finally starting to look up? When you thought you were making some progress in the world and then it all came crashing down. It is my practice on Good Friday not to try to harmonize everything, to be okay with sitting with the discomfort of the fact that a good, innocent, loving man was killed in the most brutal way possible. On this day, I don't try to run away from that because I think that avoiding that really hard truth and our own complicity with injustice is part of why folks would rather burn books and censor websites than sit with the hard truths that we all need to face. We all need to face the fact that we sometimes don't really want a deep revolution. Sometimes sitting with hard truths is really good for you. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's the only way to navigate the narrow path to transformation. Good Friday is tough. And sometimes Holy Saturday, which some people call also Black Saturday, can be even tougher. That's the day in which we believe that Jesus literally goes to hell. The day when Jesus' posse of disciples are overwhelmed and depressed. When all the moving action of Good Friday finally caught up with them and they had to process what had happened. It was the Jewish Sabbath, and that year may have been one of the hardest of their entire lives. They were supposed to be celebrating and instead they were mourning. And maybe this year is the first time that I'm starting to have some understanding of how tired and overwhelmed they must have felt. So I'm not going to try to harmonize everything and tell you that it was all good and so it will be all good now. The truth is that I don't believe that things in our country and world have reached a head. I think things are going to get worse before they get better. But what I am sitting is with the reality that part of why so many people missed what Jesus was doing is because they were thinking too small. They were looking for a political leader to fix things around the edges, something like trying to just hold out until the next election where you can just change the person in power. And Jesus was telling them he was trying to completely flip the script. He wanted them not to just imagine that they could protect their entitlement programs, but that their neighborhoods would become vibrant, diverse, intergenerational communities where people know their neighbor. And when they don't try to fill the loss in their heart with things that they can't afford, and where from the New York block to the Bible Belt, from farm homesteads to Harvard frat houses, folks would see themselves in each other. Like, look radically different and have very, very different experiences and see themselves in each other. That was the kind of shift that Jesus wanted them to imagine. And their sights were still on just making it to the next election. And maybe if we want people to dream bigger, maybe if you want them to think outside the box, you have to let their world get shattered so they can break out of their small thinking. Maybe the only way to a revolution of love is with a broken heart. Maybe only a broken heart is vulnerable enough to love on the scale that can actually overcome fear. Maybe that is the good news of Good Friday. And maybe it makes total sense that I don't know if I could get that before now. I don't think it's as bad as it's gonna get, but my heart is definitely breaking. And maybe, hopefully, that means I'm on the precipice of dreaming bigger and loving deeper. And maybe a few other crazy people are out there who are not just trying to make it to some next election, but willing to try to restore deep-knit communities that we traded for the trinkets of social media-driven consumer existence. Not just restore them, but revitalize and transform them. And maybe my broken heart is just now getting bruised enough to go for the big dream. And if that is true, there are dark, dark days ahead. But a transformed me, with a faith deep enough to strive for a transformed we, maybe there's a glimmer of good in that. And in these dark days, a glimmer of good is good enough for me. Have a powerful Good Friday, y'all.